Okay, today we're going to be making a butternut squash and sweet potato casserole. I wanted to do it because I thought it would be a very fall-themed meal, and it's going to be nice and sweet and savory. It'll be great for Thanksgiving or just really any time around the fall in October or November. First thing you're going to do is quarter the butternut squash. It's really difficult to cut through this thing, so you're going to need a big knife. This one really isn't big enough. You might have to put your weight on it a little bit. There. So now we got this quartered, and I'm actually going to scoop the seeds out now with a spoon. Almost forgot, you're going to want to preheat your oven to 350. So I'm going to have that preheating while I chop up my squash and sweet potato. Alright, so you scrape it out with a spoon. You can actually save these seeds just like a pumpkin and toast them if you want. And they're like a great snack. I'm not going to do that today. Just make sure you get all of that kind of stringy, gutsy stuff out of it. I'm also going to chop the ends off the butternut squash, the little stems on them, so we don't need those. Alright, I strongly suggest that you guys purchase a vegetable peeler if you don't already have one. It makes things so much easier than using a knife. So next you're just going to want to peel all the skin off the butternut squash. Alright, we're going to do the same thing with the sweet potato. I'm just going to cut the little ends off and then cut it into quarters. Be very careful with your fingers. Hopefully you guys have a sharper knife than I do. So just nice big fat quarters like that. So we're going to do 1 butternut squash and 2 sweet potatoes. And we're going to peel the sweet potatoes as well. These are a lot easier than the butternut squash. Cover these in olive oil. Here's the sweet potato. And we're going to bake them at 350 for about 5 minutes. And then we're going to add the squash and bake it for another 15 minutes. And it's just because it takes sweet potato a little bit longer to get tender. So we're going to start those guys first. And after 5 minutes, we can go ahead and do the same exact thing with the squash. We're going to leave the sweet potato in there and cook both of them for another 15-20 minutes until they're both tender. Alright, while those guys are cooking, I'm going to prepare the next ingredients. I'm going to chop up half of a yellow onion. All these ingredients are going to go towards kind of like the sauce that's going to go in all this. So I'm going to do 1.5 teaspoons of freshly chopped sage. So after about 20 minutes, we're going to remove the sweet potato and the squash. And we're going to let those cool all the way down because we're going to slice them and they can't be hot when we're touching them. So let those cool and we can work on the sauce. We're going to start a saucepan on medium-high heat. And then I'm going to put 3 tablespoons of butter. Let that cook down. And we're going to add our onions. We're just going to saute those until they are nice and tender and a little bit translucent before we add our other ingredients. 2 cups of milk. And 2 tablespoons of flour. And then we can add our sage. And I diced 2 cloves of garlic. We're going to add all that together. And then I'm going to stir this until it becomes a nice creamy sauce. Sage and garlic. It's going to take about 10 minutes for this to become a sauce. And you're going to season it with a little bit of black pepper as well. Okay, now the sauce is nice and thick. I'm going to set it aside. And we're going to get to work on slicing the butternut squash and the sweet potato. Okay, once your sweet potato is nice and cool enough for you to touch, you can start slicing it into these little half circles, just as thin as you can, and then we're going to line the bottom of a baking dish with these slices. Alright, we're going to do the same thing with the squash. Cut it into nice thin slices, and then we're going to layer that over the sweet potato layer. Okay, the next thing you're going to do is add your sauce. Do a nice even layer, about a little less than half of the sauce that you've made, over the sweet potatoes. Okay, so the recipe originally calls for asiago cheese. We couldn't find asiago cheese at any grocery store. They were all out. So we're going to use parmesan instead, which is a fine substitute. It's going to give it a little bit different of a flavor, but it's going to do the trick. I'm just going to grate it over the sauce to a nice thin layer of that. All right, now we're ready for our second layer. It's kind of like lasagna in a way with the layers. So we're gonna do our next layer of sweet potato right on top. All right, and then finally our last layer of squash. It's looking super colorful. I actually think the squash kind of looks like cantaloupe slices with carrots or something. Okay, our last layer of sauce. Just gonna dump that all on there and even it out. And then lastly, we'll put another layer of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. And then we're gonna cover it with tin foil and stick it in the oven, 350 degrees for about 25 to 30 minutes. All right, we're gonna throw this in the oven with the tin foil for about 25 minutes, and then we will check on it. If you notice, I actually only used about half of the butternut squash, so you may find that you don't need the whole thing. So we ended up using 2 sweet potatoes and a half of a butternut squash. All right, so it's been about 25 minutes. Ooh, it looks nice and cheesy. I'm gonna take the tin foil off and then let it cook in the oven again for about 10 more minutes and get the top nice and crispy. Okay, I let it broil actually for like 5 minutes just to let it get nice and crispy on top. Ooh, it looks really good. Smells delicious. It's ready to eat.
Qué sonrisa, mi bonita.